Now that you know how to play Bohnanza, we're going to take a look at it in our point-counterpoint review.
Because Mike and I disagree about the game, he's going to argue for it, and I, once again, am going to argue against it.
Legitimately this time. So the first thing that jumps out about Bohnanza, game by Uwe Rosenberg, made famous for Agricola. Mm-hmm. And I do love the name, Bohnanza, German for bean is bone, so there's a little bit of a pun in the name. But the first thing that hits you is, because the name, the theme. Bohnanza's theme, I know it's not a terribly immersive game, spoiler alert for the breakdown, but the theme just is really a lot of fun. I mean, the beans are so cute, and I always enjoy talking about them as beans. Yes, you could swap the theme out for widgets or cogs or whatever. I mean, they don't need to be beans. You could easily swap the theme for whatever you wanted. And some people, believe it or not, are turned off by the bean theme, which I can't understand. But for me, when you're playing the game, I always talk about the beans as beans. I always, when I'm trying to trade with people, I'll try to entice them by talking about the beans in the description of them. I'll say, with your acid reflux, you're not going to want those chili beans. You should get those off your hands and trade them to me. I got some you'll like, some nice soybeans. Soybeans, a million uses, great for the environment, great for your health. You'll love it. I just think it's really fun. It adds a layer of fun to the game because they're such cutesy little beans.
Well, that's true. They are cutesy. I think, we said this previously we said about Munchkin that it's a social game and you're going to get out of it what you put into it. At least that was my take on it. In thinking about this game, I think that's probably going to be true of all social games, because that's why I'm not a great big fan of this one, is that when I played it at your college's game group, but I played it with the younger end of that spectrum, and you and I had just met. And I think the other players at the table were having fun because they were all engaged and they were all in friends and they were having fun, but I was sort of the odd man out, and it just didn't really grab me mainly because I wasn't engaged in socializing in the game. So that's only going to be true if you have a table full of people. It's only going to be more true if you have a table full of people who just aren't really into the bean aspect of the game, or even the social aspect of the game. This is going to be a boring game for you if you're just not that into it.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Sorry to hear that you had that bad experience. That the game can be weak then, but this is a social game done right, folks. Bohnanza has it. Unlike Munchkin, the gameplay of Bohnanza drives the conversation. You don't just happen to have conversation on top of the game. The game is all about communicating.
There is something in the game that forces you to communicate.
Absolutely. And you know what? This is a game that kind of, I would say, transcends its box, because there's just so much emergent gameplay with this one.
Oh, boy.
But it's true, because I've seen people, now, if you just follow the rules as written with the strictly one-on-one trades and not being able to trade beans that you've received in a trade anymore that turn, it is a little limiting. But if you suspend those, you can really get creative. So with this one, I've seen people trade with credit. I've said, I owe you about a 20 level bean, about a soybean or a blue bean. I'll give it to you later. Or not a soybean, a wax bean or a blue bean. I'm good for it. I've seen people offer exclusive trading rights or priority trading, saying, this is kind of a good deal for me, but I'll tell you what, Tom, in the future, I'm going to give you first crack at any of my beans. I've seen people intimidate other players into trading. I've seen people just tip their hat and, say, well, you'd better trade with me or else. It's going to be a long ride home if you don't make this trade. Conversely, I've seen people place bean embargoes and bingos, if you will, on other players. And when they, I've seen somebody, make a coalition with another player and say, we're not going to make any trades with that guy over there. He's a jerk. Nobody trade with him. You know what? We're not going to trade with him. And if you trade with him, you don't trade with us. So I've seen people embargo. I have seen people make blind trades. So I've seen people say, you know what? I don't have anything for you right now, but I'm going to draw some cards at the end of this turn, and you're going to get the last two. The last two I draw, whatever they are, they're yours for the taking. You can trade them, you can grab them, whatever you want. I've seen people make trades on the beans that they may draw. So at one point, I kid you not, I was offered somebody said, okay, I'm about to draw 4 beans at the end of my turn. Any green beans I draw are yours. You could get 4 green beans in the trade, or you get none. The risk is yours, gentle farmer. So there's just so much that goes into this game that isn't in the box. It isn't in the rules. I've never seen a game quite like this where there's been so much gameplay and so many crazy stories that the rules facilitate.
The rules facilitate, but don't include. A lot of those trading aspects are a counter. They're a house rule. They're a counter to what's in the box because the rules say you can't trade for the purpose of trading. You can't trade what you get in trade this turn, and you can't trade with more than one person. Mm-hmm. So if you're willing to adopt that house rule, and if I'm forced to play this game again, I absolutely will advocate for that because I would love to be part of a bean bargo.
And then bingo, please.
And then bingo, you're right.
I've coined the term.
Bingo. Yes. No, the no three-way rule does hinder the creativity pretty severely.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. But even if you take away all that emergent gameplay, which I'm not willing to, you still have tremendous depth of gameplay just in the box. So the game scales really well from maybe not three, but from 4 all the way up to 7 players because you deal a different number of cards for the starting hands. You take out beans that are not appropriate for that number. So you take out the coffee beans for a 4-player game or a 5-player game. You'll take out the cocoa beans and garden beans for a larger game, just to make the game flow a little more smoothly.
I would say that the game scales well for 3 players, just not that entertaining for 3 players.
I would agree with that. In addition, the beans turning into the coins adds an interesting kind of scarcity to it. So in the tutorial, I talked about trading in 4 wax beans. One of them becomes a coin, the rest go back in. That's something you have to think about when you're trading, is there are 22 wax beans in the deck, but now there are fewer because somebody's harvested them already. So kind of that nice flow of the cards really works for me. And finally, the hand order, the kind of driving mechanic of the hand order, just adds another layer to what would otherwise potentially be rather dry trading. When you have the hand order that you must respect and you kind of have a clock on when those beans have to go into your fields, that throws some urgency on it. And that means that beans that you wouldn't care about otherwise, suddenly you need to be very cautious, very careful with.
That actually was the most engaging part about the game for me when I was playing it, because I felt there is some strategy here. There are some other trading games out there. Pit is the first one that comes to mind. It just doesn't have that level of strategy. It's all shouting.
It's willy-nilly.
Yeah. I was really engaged by that depth of gameplay, as you say, to drop some more buzzwords on the table here. But I experienced also the planning the third bean field, and that is just not a worthwhile tactic.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Like I said, I was sort of left out of a lot of the trading at the table, and I think the idea of the third bean fill is that you can use it to garner more points, more beans, but it doesn't help. It's just too great a cost to invest to get the return you're going to need for it, unless you somehow get a windfall of the bright beans. It's just not worth it. That third bean field really takes away from the rest of the game, which is really elegantly put together.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, the third bean field, it seems like you only really need it when people are not willing to trade with you, in which case the last thing you need to be doing is spending more coins. So right. I agree, it's not usually a good idea. But on the whole, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, like I said, I didn't have the greatest time playing it, but in reviewing it for the show...
Like any social game, it's going to depend on the people.
Right, it's going to depend on the people. And I do appreciate social games in general in my own table. And in reviewing of the show, I think I came to a deeper appreciation for it. So whereas before doing this review, I would have given it maybe a 2 or a 3, I think I like it enough now. I would definitely want to play it some more. Of course, with the house rule trading.
Just open up the trading.
I think I'll give it a 5. I'd give it a 5. I'm not quite ready to buy it, but I would definitely play it.
That's still pretty harsh, Tom. I have to say, this one for me, it's a solid 8. I really enjoy it. Like I said, it's unique in its theme. It's unique in its trading game format. There's not too many trading games out there. And darn, I can't think of another game that has elicited such interesting responses from a variety of people.
Well, there you have it. That's our review of, what's it called? Bohnanza. Get ready for the breakdown. This is the breakdown of Uwe Rosenberg's Bohnanza. We give it 40 short and 60 long. Your game time will vary immensely depending on how talkative your players are. Ours wrap up in about 90 minutes. We give it 40 fast and 60 slow. The game can drag with a lot of players, especially if you're not involved in the trading. We give it 30 luck because an abundance or lack of valuable beans will help or hinder the player who gets them. But the game is won or lost based on your skill with planting and trading, so we give it 70 skill. We give Bohnanza 30 strategy because you are often looking a turn ahead to plan out your planting. Otherwise, it's your skill at trading and planting this turn that determines how well you do, so we give it 70 tactics. We give it 95 in interaction because it is a social trading game. We gave it only 5 independence, mainly because you have the option of planting a third bean field and that doesn't affect the other players. We give it 20 immersion and 80 abstraction. Most of the gameplay is abstracted, but the bean theme is fun and it can aid you in trading. We give it 80 simplicity and 20 complexity. It's not difficult to teach or to learn, but there is a little bit of difficulty in adapting to the always able to harvest rule. We give it 20 expandability and 80 completeness. There are expansions for the game, but they do fundamentally change how it's played, so we don't use them. On our trophy scales, we give it 3 originality because it's a fun trading game with a little bit more depth of gameplay than you find in that genre. We give it 3 trophies in value. It's got a moderate price, and the plastic coated cards are as durable as they need to be. Mike gives it an 8 out of 10, Tom gives it a 5 out of 10, and that is the breakdown of Bohnanza.